Thank you everyone for joining me. I'm Katie Wolf. I am the Science and Technology Librarian at Fordham, and I'm really excited to share OpenRefine with you guys. So today we will be talking about managing messy data. We will be working with the Squirrel Census. It's a pretty fun bit of data. What is OpenRefine? It is a very, very powerful and useful tool for working with and transforming data. It's compatible with a really wide variety of data formats, so whatever you want to throw at it, it can probably handle. This includes JSON files, XML, RDF. It also can handle working with relational databases. You can paste a Google Sheets URL into it and it will do just fine. This is a great tool if you want to quickly standardize data, you want to quickly understand what's going on with a data set, and you want to get data ready for future work, whether it be visualization or just looking at numbers, or even parsing text. It has a lot of utility. So how does it work? It runs a small Java-based server on your computer. You don't need to know what that means, really. You don't need to know Java. If you have a Mac or your Windows, it's already there and ready for you. What it means for you as a user is it runs locally, so even though it's going to pop up in your browser of choice, it's not on the internet, your data is not accessible to anybody, and you don't need the internet to run. So even though it looks like it's in a browser, you don't need the internet and it's not connected. You may see a command line or terminal window pop up when you open OpenRefine up. You can ignore this. It's just logging all of your actions in the background on the server, but you can totally ignore it. Is it safe? Sometimes you get messages, especially again on Mac OS, that this developer is unknown or not verified. That's because it's an open source software. It's built by people like you and me. But it is safe. I've never had an issue. I've been using it for many, many years. And one great thing about open source software is anyone can look at it and see what's going on. So if you're worried, all of the documentation is out there and easy for you to view. I do have a little instruction section right here. If you get an angry message from your computer about opening this up, find it in Applications, right-click it, and open it up manually, and you should be good to go. But again, ask me after if you have any trouble accessing OpenRefine. Here's how you can download it. Hopefully everyone's all set. We won't be going over downloading it during this workshop, but again, it's there for you if you need this after the workshop. Finally, we're going to actually get into the good part, the fun part. We are going to be opening up OpenRefine. So if you haven't already, go ahead and download the data that's available through this link. Download it as a CSV file if possible. But again, OpenRefine can handle anything, but CSV will probably be the easiest and least space intensive for you guys. Right, and while you guys do that, I'm going to switch over to OpenRefine and we will get started. So this is what OpenRefine looks like. I have it opened up in Chrome. That's my default browser, but you can paste in. So here we go. You can choose files directly from your computer. You can paste in URLs. You can copy just raw data. Like if you have JSON and Notepad, you can paste it in here, connect to a relational database. You can also open previous projects, import projects. And I'd like to make a quick note about language settings. I've only worked with OpenRefine in English, so I can't speak to how well it handles other languages, but I do want you to know it's there if you're working with data that's in a different language. So we're going to create a project. You simply choose the file you'd like to work with and click Next. It will upload the data. It works pretty fast. This is a relatively large data set, and it loads it pretty quickly. This is just a preview, and it's to make sure that the way OpenRefine is understanding your data is the way that you want it to. You can adjust how it parses the data. And again, it's kind of fun to mess with this and see how it works. You can choose just the text file. You can choose a JSON file if OpenRefine didn't automatically figure out what you wanted. Usually I find it to be pretty smart though. So we are going to stick with the defaults here. And once you have all the settings set up the way you like, you can change the project name as you see fit and tag as you see fit and click Create Project. And here we go, our data, our project, we're ready to work. So I'll give you a quick tour of what's going on. We have the left-hand sidebar with facet filter, undo, redo, and we'll talk about those. You have all of your rows and records, and you can adjust the view here. So it starts out at 10. I think 50 is a little bit more fun. Standard data etiquette is going to tell you that you want to have the same number of rows and records, but that's not always what you're working with data. So as you can see in this data set, they're the same number, and this is good to check. We're going to be working with rows, though. You can flip through pages, and then as you scroll, you can look at the data and then scroll this way to see all of the different columns. And I think it's important to understand with OpenRefine, the fundamental unit of working with stuff is a column. So it's really important to think not about each individual row, but about how the columns work and work with each other. With that said, let's start actually looking at some of this data. We'll start with this. So I want to show you text. OpenRefine is really great at working with text, which makes it fun because a lot of the other data-oriented software out there is relatively number-based, and OpenRefine really handles text well. So what I've done is this, just to show you again, is when you click the down arrow, that's all the things you can do with these cells and columns. And I've gone to just text filter, and it will open up another one over here. So this section is kind of all the stuff you have going on with OpenRefine right now. It's all your facets, filters, the things you've messed with and asked it to do. And with the text filter, you can say, I want all the gray squirrel records. And once it's filtered, as you can see, we've got only gray squirrels. And if you come over here, these are the record numbers. So as you can see, it's filtered out some of them. So if you ever look over here and the numbers seem a little weird, that's because you probably filtered or sorted or done something to the data. But don't worry, you can undo it. But you can filter by text, and it doesn't have to be the whole word. So for example, if we go to combination and we filter, you can also type gray in here, and it will be every cell with gray in it. This is great if you have huge chunks of text and you're looking for strings of words or a single word in it. And then I also want to show you a great way to look at data kind of as a whole and to see what's going on without having to scroll through 3,000 rows. And this is where OpenRefine gets really powerful. So if we scroll, we can see this other activities section. So this is just an empty text box where people were allowed to talk about the squirrel's other activities besides general squirreling. And as you scroll, you can see that a lot of them are blank, and the ones that aren't blank are very particular and very individualized. So if we want to get a whole view of all these things without scrolling through 60 pages, you can facet. And facet is, I think, one of the most fun aspects of OpenRefine. It shows you all the different pieces of data and how many pieces there are. So with something like this, we're going to choose text facet, and we'll talk about some of the other ones as well later. But we'll start with text. And it shows you there is one, so this is how many rows have that data, one piece of data that is begging, one piece of data that's burying an acorn. So this is a great way to quickly see what's going on with your data, all lumped together by theme, so by other activities here. So you can see lots of squirrely activities, lots of chasing, and the numbers refer to the other squirrel they're seeing. This one's just chilling. Lots of squirrels chill, at least 5. So faceting is a great way, quick view of your data. Faceting has other powers as well. But to see them in action, we'll go to the animal type column. Now, we want all of the animals here to be squirrels because it is, in fact, a squirrel census. So we will facet once again by text. You'll see we have 12 choices. You can see them all here. We want these all to be the same. So another really great thing about facets is that it allows you to edit a bunch of data very quickly. So for example, this is absolutely not what we want. This will mess with us later. You can click edit and you can type in, and I've seen squirrel so much this week, it's hard to tell if it's a real word anymore, but I'm hoping that's spelled right. You can click apply, and now that's gone, and this number got bigger. So what I've done is I've edited everything that had that bit of data, and I've corrected it, and now it's gone into the correct pile. And this can also be done if you have a few different options, right? So you can edit just this cinnamon, and now it's fixed. So that's a great thing, especially if you're dealing with manually entered data where people are prone to misspell or prone to mistype. I'm bad at spelling and typing, so even data I've made myself has errors like this, so OpenRefine really saves me. Another thing, if you're not interested in typing Squirrel 11 more times to get it right, OpenRefine has built-in algorithms to cluster data. So it supports two different methods of clustering, key collision and nearest neighbor. And for nearest neighbor, it supports two different types. And for key collision, it supports 6. These are really interesting. I find it quite fascinating how they work. And if you are interested, you can read more. But you don't have to know zero about these algorithms and how they cluster for them to work for you. And that's the great thing about OpenRefine. It has a lot of intelligence and technology built into it, and you don't need to know any of it for it to do a good job for you. So fingerprints, it tends to be more conservative. As you can see, it's just connecting these two. While metaphone and cologne phonetic, they're both based off of the phonetics of the contents, these tend to be more liberal in their catch more. And it's up to you and your data what's best, and you can use a bunch at once. So once you've clustered in a way that you like, you've checked that these all belong together and you want them to be one thing, you can click merge and make sure that this cell value is correct. If you wanted them all to be lowercase, you could change that. So you can make this anything you want. You could even make it dog for some reason, if you were so inclined, but I want you to know you can make it whatever you want. But we are going to keep it as squirrel, just to stay on theme. You go down here and you can merge selected and close, and that will finish your clustering section. Or you can merge selected and recluster to see if it comes up with anything else. To move this over a little, you can still see what's going on over here. So you can see that clustering caught almost everything. And we could play around with other clusters to see if anything else gets caught. And this one caught those little squirrels over there, which makes sense because nearest neighbor is counting how much other typing you would have to do, how much type editing you have to do to get to the word. So adding a little letter on the end makes them pretty close neighbors. And you can merge and recluster. And you can see squirrel disappeared. Now, the other weird spelling of squirrel doesn't get caught in any of these clusters, which sometimes happens, and that's why it's important to double check and not let a machine do everything. But as you all know, we can go over here and change it manually. And then there we go. This whole column has all 3,023 rows for this column have been fixed and are now the same, and we can see that really easily over here. We can also do that if it's not all the same value. If we want to, cluster into a few different clusters in one column, that's absolutely possible. And sometimes you're faced with choices about how you want to spell or how you want to standardize your data. And what's nice about OpenRefine is it allows people who know the data set and who understand the field but may not be, the best with actual intense data management to take some ownership back over the data that they may have worked on or be really familiar with without a lot of technical stuff getting in the way. So it's up to you how you want to cluster. As you can see, you got to double check because these two are really close, but they're both wrong. So going in and fixing. I'm going to take reddish brown. I'm also going to decide that that's cinnamon. See what these pop up. And then if you want to close, you can also go back and edit this way. But I feel like that might take a while. You can go. So again, the whole point is that you don't need to know how any of this works. You just need to know how to click. And sometimes you'll get stuff like this where you have to make a choice about how you want to handle it. You could add this to a new column, but I'm just going to get rid of that white and hope that it all works out, which I think it may. So there we go. So we fixed 2 whole columns in less than 5 minutes, and that would have taken a lot of typing by hand. So now I'm going to show you something else that is great about text faceting. It allows you to sort data and sort data in multiple ways. So we're going to come over to this date, and right now we facet like let's say perhaps numeric facet because it looks like numbers, it's going to tell us there are no numeric values. So it's seeing that this is regular text, and that's not what we want. So we can go to Edit Cells, Transform. Now, if you click just regular transform, it's going to take you to something that looks like this, which maybe is scary, maybe not. OpenRefine runs on a language called General Refine Expression Language, GREL for fun. And you do not need to know GREL to work with OpenRefine, but if you are liking OpenRefine, learning GREL will open up so many more doors, and we will be talking about it in the next session. But for now, we are going to stick to what OpenRefine has already done for us, the common transforms. As you can see, you can trim white space, which always causes issues with data. You can transform the casing, and you can transform how it sees the data. So we're going to switch this to a date. And now we have it with the international standard of a date. And now we can facet by other things. So this still isn't a number because it's a date, but they do have a timeline facet. And so just like the text facet showed us all the different sections of text, this is going to show us all the little bits of dates. And we have a timeline here. And this is a great way to quickly sort if you're only interested in a date range for your dated data. So we can say, I only am interested in the early squirrels, the early October squirrels. So now we have 13,000 squirrels, all of which were seen before or on October 10th. And let's say I also only wanted the gray squirrels from this date. You can stack facets. So we're going to text facet on primary color. And if we click gray, now we've limited it to only the gray squirrels for the early part of October. And you can stack facets on facets on facets as much as you want. And if you are interested, you can save all these rows and export only this data. So if you're interested in splitting up data, this is a really fast way to split data based on multiple different columns. Right, so another big bane of data is duplicate rows. Often we don't want duplicates because they can affect how we are looking at the data. So I'm also going to show you how duplicates can be removed, and it can be a little bit tricky, but I trust that we will all do it. And the first thing we want to do is we're using the unique squirrel ID column. Usually, if you want to remove duplicates, you're going to have a column that's unique to each record. This can be just the column number if you are sure you don't have different items in your data. This can be any identifying number, whatever makes sense for the data you're using. And we're going to sort on the unique column. And as you can see, you have a lot of different sorting options. We are going to choose text, even though there are numbers in here. If it has any letters in it at all, OpenRefine will understand that as text, and it will still sort numerically, as you're going to see. I'm going to click OK. And then we have it sorted. As you can see over here, these numbers are all mixed up, and that's because this sort's not permanent. We haven't adjusted what order they're in for this data set. We've just visually sorted it. And to remove duplicates, we want to make sure that this sort is actually permanent. So what you can do is after you've sorted, this will pop up. If you take this sort off, it disappears. So it only gives you this option if it's relevant, which is kind of nice. But if you're ever wondering why it's not there, make sure you've sorted. And you can take it away. You can resort, reverse it, and you can also make it permanent. So now, this is the actual order of the data as OpenRefine understands it. We'll go to, the next one is kind of a trick, kind of a little hack. You're going to edit cells and do blank down. And because they're sorted, it understands that you want to make the columns below that match the ones above, aka the duplicates, blank. So you can see we have 6 blank cells now. So we're going to facet, and this is also a fun facet. OpenRefine really is data oriented, so a lot of the built-in tools are really, really useful and thoughtful in terms of dealing with data. So the customized facets, we have duplicates. As you can see, we have these are the duplicates, and they've all been blanked out. And now let's say we want to get rid of these rows permanently. If you want to get rid of your view of rows, however you've filtered and edited, you can go to all. And this is powerful, so watch out, but this will edit everything you're looking at currently. So don't worry too much because you can undo things, but you go to edit the rows, remove matching rows, get rid of the facet. We'll go to unique squirrel ID, and there is also a duplicate facet. We'll go there. As you can see, no duplicates, they're all gone. So this process will work for any type of duplicate, and I know it's like 4 steps, which is too many for me to remember consistently. These are written down and there are recipes out there, so don't worry, and this will be recorded. But that's how you remove duplicates. So we've cleaned up the data, we've removed the duplicates. Now we kind of want to pull some more information from it. So let's get rid of this facet to be able to view all of our rows. And OpenRefine has a lot of options for pulling data apart and putting it back together. So we have these highlight for colors, and let's say we wanted to visualize these somehow. Black, cinnamon, white is kind of hard to visualize because it's a whole cluster of information. So let's say we want these all to be their own column. We want just a bunch of highlight for columns. You can do that. So we're going to go to Edit, Column. As you can see, there's lots of options. You can change its location. You can rename and remove. You can add columns based on this one. And we will talk about these guys at the very end because they're really fun. But for now, we will split into several columns. And you can decide what your separator is. You can have it guess the cell type. You can also split by field length. So if you know you want to split it every 5 characters, that's an option. I also want to note that you can decide the separator. If you're working with big chunks of text, and OpenRefine can handle like paragraphs and paragraphs of text, and you're putting them together and taking them apart, a comma is going to be pretty common in a lot of text. So you can also change the separator if you've put in separators, you can customize them here. But we are going to stick with a comma because, as you can see, that's what they're separated by. And we will click OK. And here we go. Now we have 3 different highlight for color columns, and they're all separated. They're all their own thing, which is really nice. But let's say, no, that was actually a mistake. We want to smush them back together. Don't worry, also possible. You can edit column, join the columns back together. And here you can see you can join whatever columns you want. We're going to pick all the highlight for colors, and we're going to choose the comma as the separator. And watch what happens. Okay, so that looks weird, right? These guys? And it's interesting because we've done the same thing we just did, but in reverse, but we're still getting something strange happening. And that's because it knows that there's one, and we're telling it to join with these 2, but they're blank. And it doesn't know exactly what we're trying to get it to do. So let's say we want to go backwards. We have this undo, redo thing right here. If you take a look, it's cataloged and logged every single thing I've done so far. So there's unlimited, infinite undo, redo. You can always go back all the way to the very beginning. You can always look at all the steps you've taken. And you can also, if you're so inclined, extract all the steps you've taken, and it will save them. And you can paste this into any project you want. So if you find yourself doing the same 5 steps over and over for different data sets, you can have a little recipe made and saved, and you can implement it for everyone without having to do all the clicking, which is kind of nice. But for now, we're going to go back 1 step, and we should be good, right? So it's not weird anymore. So if we want to avoid that, we want to smush them all together, but there's not an equal number, like some columns have empties, have nulls. All we have to do is just let it know that we want it to ignore the nulls. So you can choose that right here, skip nulls. And you can also make this all a new column if you don't want to get rid of the column you're joining it to. And as I said in the beginning, there's lots to play with, and no one will know if you've made a mistake. So if you're wondering what any of this stuff does, you can click with impunity, and no one will know. And you can always use the undo redo to go back if you feel like you've messed up. I'm gonna click OK. And now that looks normal, right? That looks a little bit better because we don't have those weird commas there. And you don't have to use commas. You can use the plus signs as well, and it will work just as well. Now we have a lot of color columns. So let's head over to this over here. And let's clean this column up. Let's see what's going on. Right? Lots of different central parks, but we only want the one we know and love. So let's do some quick clustering. And we are going to choose New York City. And I've quite frequently run through all the clusters just because I don't like fixing things over there. So I'm an over clusterer. I think most super professional OpenRefine people would maybe frown upon my liberal use of it, but I also think it's fun to watch things change. Even if it feels silly to cluster a bunch, it still works, and that's what matters. And then as you can see right here, this one's still alone. So even though it's spelled correctly, it's got a different case. So this is case sensitive, which is good ultimately, but can sometimes be annoying. So there, we have it all fixed. You can also split this. Let's say we just want Central Park as one thing and New York City as another. We have it split. So now that we have this all cleaned up, we can take a look, make sure that everything looks all right. I'm going to show one sort of advanced thing that I think really opens up OpenRefine to people who are interested in adding to data and seeing how data is connected to other data. And that's by reconciling values with outside vocabularies and data hubs. So what I'm going to be showing today is how to connect your OpenRefine dataset to Wikidata and then add data based off of that. But I do want you to know that there are a bunch of other vocabularies and tools. For example, Getty vocabularies connects to OpenRefine. So if you work with a certain vocabulary frequently, definitely check to see if it connects with OpenRefine. And if it doesn't, someone out there can probably make it since it's open source. But today we will be working with Wikidata. So we have Central Park. You're going to go down here to reconcile. Click start reconciling. You're going to pick the service. So I only have Wikidata installed, but if you install other vocabularies, this is where you choose the service or extension. And as you can see, it has a lot of good suggestions already. It's pretty smart. So it says, this looks like an urban park. Would you like to connect it to an urban park or a tourist attraction? That also may make sense. And again, you can always undo. So if you don't like what it's auto-matched, then you're one click away from undoing it. You can also have it look at other columns for relevant data. For example, there are central parks in a lot of different cities. So perhaps we want to include New York City as an extra piece of information. If you know the Wikidata number or the vocabulary word that you want to match it to without it searching, you can also put in things automatically. And you don't need to know the Wikidata number necessarily. You can type in Central Park and it will pop up and you can choose that. We know that's the right one, but I also want to show you what happens if we do this. And once you have this all set the way you want it to do, you can click Start Reconciling. And this can sometimes take a long time. And by long, I mean not less than a second, especially if you have big data. So I would say probably about a second for every 10 rows generally. So you have to be a little bit patient, but it's a lot faster than doing the work yourself. So now we have all of these cells, since they're all the same, with recommendations for what you want to match to. And you can hover over it and you can click to make sure that it's the right one. So this is the one in Manhattan. That's where these squirrels live. They don't live, they're New York City squirrels. And it's connected to the Wikidata entry for this. So we know that this is the correct one, and we can match this individual cell, or we can match all identical cells. And that's what these little checkboxes are too. So you can click in 2 different places and get the same result. So clicking here is the same as matching all identical cells. And now we have Central Park, and this is linked out to Wikidata, and you can connect other information for it. So as fun as it is to have a link out, what does it add value-wise to this data set? And you can pull data from this Wikidata set and add it to your data. So let me show you how to do that, because that's where it gets fun. So remember how I said we were going to talk about these things later? That's what we're doing now. We can add columns from reconciled values. Here are the suggested properties, right? So you can add Central Park's phone number if it has one listed. More useful perhaps is the GeoNames ID. You can also come over to Central Park and see what values are here for you. So let's say we want to add the architect. We want to know who built the lovely house that our squirrels are living in. You can see it will show you a preview, which is great. So we know there's actually no phone number for Central Park, unfortunately, no one to call and complain to. But there is an architect. So once you have the values you want, you can click OK. And again, you have to give it a little bit of time, just because it's connecting and processing a bunch of data. But this is especially if each of these values is different. Like let's say you had a data set of artists and you wanted their birth years. You don't want to have, and you have 5,000 artists. You don't want to have to type in manually all those birth years. If you can connect to Wikidata and all of the artists in your data set have that value for them, you can add them in less than a minute, which at least for me is way faster than typing. So now you can see we have added these 2 things. And if you don't like it, you can also go back and undo it. You can do the same for the colors here. So if we want to reconcile based on color, just to show you what it looks like with multi values in a column, it knows that these are colors, which is great. It's usually pretty smart. When we were first starting with the Squirrel Census, there was a programming language that was really being pushed on Wikidata, so it would very frequently want to connect to like the Squirrel programming language. So, but usually it is pretty good at figuring out what you want from it. I like to clear those. Some people like to keep all their facets open all the time. And it's similar to me to having a bunch of tabs open. It can be a little stressful. So you can hover over and see which one fits the best. So we don't want eye color, we want regular color. And even though it's spelled differently, it still figures out what we want. So now all the gray is that way. Cinnamon is the color named after cinnamon. And again, you can add values based on these. And it's not suggesting great things, but if you go to the Wikidata entry, you can see images of it. If you want to add the images, you can add in the hex numbers. So if you have a huge list of numbers and you want to grab the hex codes for all of them, this is a really quick way to do it. So if you know something's in Wikidata or in other vocabularies and you have to match, honestly, for me, more than 20 things, I'll open it up in OpenRefine and just use Wikidata to match things because it's way faster than typing. And just for fun, I will also reconcile against Squirrel just because there are some really good pictures of squirrels in Wikidata. But the key takeaway here is that OpenRefine is, as you saw, really useful for quickly cleaning up data and getting it all sorted, but it's also really wonderful for taking data past where you have it now, for expanding it or for narrowing it down to make it easier to use. So it's not just about cleaning it up and making it look nice. It's also about making it more usable and more interesting. And I think that's what makes it really, really powerful. So as you can see, there are lots of different things for squirrels because there are lots of squirrels in the world. And it's just kind of fun to see all the different options. Right, so we have a regular squirrel right here, but we also have Eastern gray. And I don't know about you guys, but this guy looks really, really familiar to me. So I'm going to choose Eastern gray squirrel. And if you click, you can go learn about him. And if you have a bunch of different animals, you can add in the images, you can add in the taxon names, so you can really easily expand. So let's say we've done all we want to do. We've finished working with this. Now we have to save it. And I want to emphasize that this is working locally on a server, but you're not actually changing your data set. So if you were to do all of this work and you were to just exit out of OpenRefine, all of your work would be lost because you haven't actually touched the data as it sits on your computer and on your locally stored file. So in order to save your work, you have to export it. And there are lots of different options. I tend to export as a CSV. Something to keep in mind is with the CSV, it doesn't support these links out. So if you're looking to save that utility, you're going to have to save it as an OpenRefine project, which can be saved directly to your Google Drive if you've connected this to Google. If you are not interested in saving that, you are only connecting to Wikidata to expand your data set, you can export as a CSV, and it downloads right there for you. If you ever need to open up your project again, you can click open and upload it right back, or you can, let's say I've closed out, oh no, it's gone, I didn't save, what do I do? That was so much work. If you go to OpenRefine, and instead of doing the create project, the open project, you can click back into it and all your work is saved. So it does do its best to help you out. Another little tip, I don't know about you guys, but I have a trackpad. So sometimes if you are tracking and you accidentally go back, let's say you've gone back and you've done a lot of work, you can press forward and it will go back to your data and save all the work you've done. It really does try to help you out. So hopefully this was helpful. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming.